Imagine a night
This was the right thing to do.
where every decision
What the hell was that?
and every single action
I just saw someone at the cabin.
affects your fate
Very funny. Guys, come
and the fate of
That is
those
one big
around
pile of
you.
shit.
Until Dawn is terrible. It promises so much in the way of choice and doesn't deliver at all. Yet it has gotten a lot of positive attention. The general consensus says it's quite a good game. I don't understand this. Overrated is a term I could use to describe this game, however I won't. I'm not fond of calling games overrated because it just comes off as condescending. It's basically like saying you're not allowed to like something as much as you do. I'm not here to do that. If you like this game, even after I'm done tearing into it, then keep liking it. Between the two of us, you are the real winner since you're the one with a game you can enjoy. That being said, a few things you should know before I start. This is a game that focuses on story more than anything else, except maybe graphics. I'm going to spoil everything. Another thing you should know. When it comes to story versus gameplay in games, I heavily lean more towards gameplay. I believe that gameplay should be the #1 priority no matter what the genre. If a game has a good story but bad gameplay, it's a bad game. Video games are not, and have never been, strictly a storytelling medium. I'm not discrediting the medium's ability to tell good stories. Video games can and have had excellent stories that are as good or even better than what movies have to offer. And they have proven that they can tell stories in unique ways that would be impossible in any other medium. I'm also not against games, even simple ones like Mario games, having a story. I would always prefer a game to have a good story than to not have one. What I am against are games that put too much focus on the story to the detriment of the gameplay. Games have more in common with board games than movies or books. Hell, they even have more in common with sports than movies. And I would not forgive terrible gameplay even if the story is good. With that out of the way, you might be wondering why I even bothered with Until Dawn if I'm so against games that prioritize story. Well, because I actually see potential in this kind of game. It's in the same style as Heavy Rain. It advertises that you can change the story with your choices. The gameplay part of it would be the choices you make, and that is something I find to be interesting even if it wouldn't be my kind of game. The problem is that you don't actually have as much choice as the game makes you believe there is. They focus too much on making a single story, and that resulted in most choices having little or no impact in the story. Here's the short review. Until Dawn is ruined because of its focus on trying to tell its own story, and it doesn't let you make the story your own. And now for the long review. Remember, the story will be spoiled in its entirety. The first thing that happens is the game telling you about the butterfly effect while visually alluding to how many different pathways there are depending on your choices. This is a lie. The story never branches off as much as it's trying to make you believe. The main problem with this game is that it has an illusion of choice. Your choices have very little meaning. The game starts the same and it ends the same no matter the choice you make. Sure, some choices have impact, but they mostly determine who lives or dies. Which would be fine, but that doesn't have any impact to the story. Something as big as a character dying does not change the story, because even if they survive a scenario in which they can die, they become irrelevant to the story from that point forward. The story stays the same regardless of who is dead and who is alive. That is what completely breaks this game. It may not be obvious on a first playthrough though. I will say the first playthrough can be quite enjoyable, because you don't know what the problems are and how much of a choice you don't have. Now, some of you might excuse that if the story itself is good, but it is not good at all, and I'll tell you exactly why. The game is divided between a prologue and 10 chapters. The prologue starts with a group of friends in a lodge on a mountain. A bunch of them seem to be plotting something that, as we soon find out, is pranking Hannah, who has a crush on this guy by tricking her into believing that he wants to get it on with her, while the others hide and watch. Is that the kinds of pranking kids do these days? But whatever. It doesn't take very long until we are in control of Beth, who is Hannah's sister. So this is the first bit of gameplay, which is largely walking around and interacting with specific objects. The game takes a fixed camera perspective like Resident Evil, which is annoying, although thankfully it doesn't use tank controls. No, the movement feels bad anyways. You're slow and turning is sluggish, and it doesn't matter since you're mostly going down straight paths. In this room, you need to interact with a couple objects, and this is something you will do a lot in the game, and it's annoying. So it's not enough to just push a single button to look at an object like most games. You'll push X to get close to it, and then you need to hold R2 to pick it up, and then use the analog stick to turn it over, and of course they do it as slow and robotic as possible, which ruins any immersion that this is trying to give. It takes more effort to look at a piece of paper here than in real life. You do this very frequently in the game, and it only helps to slow down the pace even more. It's annoying. Just use one button to pick something up like every other game. So the prank happens, and Hannah is so embarrassed she runs out into the snow without a coat, in one of the many examples of characters ignoring the cold. Beth notices someone out there, and here you get your first meaningless choice that has zero effect on the rest of the game. She figures out what happened, and runs out to find Hannah, while I guess everyone else just stands around. So now we have a quick time event. Yay! I thought we were past this. I thought the industry had finally figured out that QuickTime events are bad and stopped using them. Oh, but we had to, otherwise we'd have to actually make gameplay. Besides, it's like a choose-your-own-adventure. No, bad mechanics are bad mechanics, no matter where they're implemented. This is what I mean with games focusing too much on story at the detriment of the gameplay. They were too focused on the story that they couldn't be bothered to make a game, but decided to throw in the laziest mechanic possible to justify it being called a game. And what's even better than QuickTime events? QuickTime events that don't even matter because nothing changes if you miss them. Okay, there are situations later where failing QuickTime events will have an effect, even kill you, but there's a lot of them that don't matter and make characters look really clumsy if you keep missing them. It's not quite as amusing as Heavy Rain, but still kind of funny. It's not long before you reach a fork in the road and have to choose which path to take. And because this is Until Dawn, it doesn't matter which you take because you always end up in the same place. After a couple more forks, Beth brings out her phone, and joy, you get to use the PS4 touchpad. Well, it's better than motion controls at least. So you're in another walking section, but this time you have a phone light that you can move around. Doesn't really matter, you never need the light to see anything. So you might be thinking, oh god, the walking is so slow. Yes, it is. But you do get a walk faster button, and it barely makes a difference. You would never notice the difference if you don't compare them, so what's the point? Just make me move faster. You continue forward, ignore the fire in the background, and eventually run into Hannah. But the predator is watching, so they run away, and off a cliff. So here's another choice. Let go, or drop Hannah. And let this choice represent the entire game because it's pointless. If you let go, they both fall to their deaths. But if you drop Hannah, well, Beth falls anyway, and you get the same scene just with Hannah already at the bottom. Now, look. I can excuse the lack of choice here, since it's basically the tutorial. It's teaching you how the game works, so you probably shouldn't have any significant choices here before the game really starts. But the problem is, this persists throughout the game. There are a lot of meaningless choices, but thus ends the prologue. But before we move on to Chapter 1, time for some counseling. At the end of every chapter, you get another session with Dr. Hill. The way he talks makes it seem like he's addressing the player rather than a character in the game.
I want you to remember this. I want you to remember this as you play your game.
It makes you question whether or not this is actually happening in universe. I like that aspect, but as the game goes on, this becomes less and less subtle. It wasn't overly subtle to begin with, but eventually they just stop trying. And it's about halfway through the game where we find out what the deal is with this guy. It's not like in Silent Hill Shattered Memories where you don't find out what the twist is until the very end of the game. And these parts suffer from the same problem as the rest of the game. All of your choices are meaningless. This first one has you answering some questions about a picture about a farm, but nothing really changes no matter what you say. But now starts Chapter 1. So it starts with an intro credits sequence, but partway through we see this girl on a bus who conveniently is listening to a radio going over the disappearance of Hannah and Beth, which happened 1 year ago. She also conveniently watches a video that shows the setup. Josh Washington, Hannah and Beth's brother, is inviting everyone back to the lodge to apparently have a porn party.
Let's party like we're fucking porn stars, okay? Make this one trip we will never forget, alright? Yes!
Kinda odd doing this on the anniversary of his own sister's disappearances, at the location of their disappearances, and with the same people who caused their disappearances, but I guess he wants everyone to move past it and have fun with his friends again. The credit sequence continues until the girl reaches her stop, and we're given a proper introduction. This is Sam, the girl who was opposed to the prank at the start. Remember that little detail? Sam walks a bit before getting to a gate which is apparently busted, so she needs to climb up the side. This is the first of many climbing sequences in the game, and these are very annoying, and I'll complain about them later, but basically you get to choose between a faster and a safer path. No matter which, you still get QuickTime events, so it's always going to be annoying. Continuing on the path, you reach a tutorial for a new type of QuickTime event. Well, it's not really a QuickTime event, but whatever. There are times when you need to hold the controller still. Now these are really easy since you could just rest the controller on your leg and you will win pretty much every time. Eventually, Sam gets to the ski lift, and you get a choice that only slightly changes some dialogue and nothing more. After that, we're introduced to Chris. He was the other guy passed out drunk with Josh in the prologue. He takes her behind the building and shows her a shooting range, but the way the camera is moved, you can't really tell what it is until Sam says it.
Pretty rad, right?
Yeah.
Come on, look at these beauties.
Beauties is not the word that comes to mind. Why is this even here?
What do you mean?
What the hell is a shooting range doing at the base of a ski lodge?
So you get the tutorial for shooting things, just point at the target and pull the trigger. There's no way you could mess this up. After a bit, a squirrel shows up and you have the option to shoot it. Obviously, if you shoot it, Sam will get upset, but also a bird will attack her and give her a small cut. After that, they get into the ski lift and Chris talks about how he and Josh first met, and he ends the story with this.
If it weren't for the fact that Jeannie Simmons hit puberty like 3 years early and on that day decided to wear a low-cut shirt that showed off her training bra, I mean, who knows? You could be riding in this cable car alone. Right now. Or talking to some other person entirely. Boom. Butterfly effect.
Again, we have the game bragging about the butterfly effect, even though this is completely false. The game seems to have a big ego regarding the butterfly effect. Aside from this, at the beginning, there's a part of your menu called the butterfly effect that keeps track of some of your choices, but a lot of it amounts to nothing. So next we meet Jess. She's the slutty character. She's at the top of the lift and meets up with Chris and Sam, and there's dialogue about the drama and relationships that doesn't matter at all. Next we meet Emily and Matt. Emily is the bitch character, and Matt is black. You know what that means. Then after a fake jump scare, Mike is introduced.
What do you think?
Jesus!
I guess now would be a good time to go over the whole relationship thing. During the prologue, Mike was hooked up with Emily, but since then they have split up. Mike is now with Jess, and Em is now with Matt. Also, Chris has a crush on Ashley, who we will meet next. Got it? Well, only one of these relationships even has a significant impact. The rest are pointless. Anyways, as Matt, you either be nice or be an ass to Mike. Doesn't really matter which. But after Mike is gone, Em wants Matt to take all the bags to the lodge for her while she goes off to apparently find Sam in totally not a suspicious way. First off, he was already carrying all the bags, and secondly, you get a choice to agree or insist you should go with her. But it doesn't matter what you pick, Matt will still go to the lodge without her. Matt is a doormat. Now we meet Ashley, who has a crush on Chris, and she's looking around and notices Mike and Em being a bit too friendly, and we get another fake jump scare from Matt.
Hey, whoa. Sorry there. Sorry about that, Ash. I didn't mean to scare you.
So Matt wants to see what Ash has been looking at. You can let him, and he'll see Mike and Em hugging and get angry. But you can also just not let him and move on. Back to Jess, you get a choice between looking at your phone or a book. I honestly don't see Jess as a book kind of girl, but it doesn't matter because Mike will interrupt with a snowball. Not sure why that choice is even there. So you two have a snowball fight. Doesn't matter who does better, but the only way Mike is ever going to get a shot in is if you're intentionally trying to lose. So partway through, a bird appears with a tutorial message saying that sometimes it's best to do nothing. So you can ignore the bird and continue the fight, and it's obvious that these two are only here so they could bang later.
Okay, that sounds vaguely dirty.
My lady.
But if you hit the bird, Jess will be sad for a bit and nothing else changes, except an icicle falls on them. You get a QTE prompt, but they'll dodge it even if you miss it, so what's the point? Yes, the icicle is directly related to hitting the bird. The game has this whole thing where if you harm animals, bad things will happen, but it's really an afterthought. There's only 1.5 times where it impacts anything. The icicle is literally the only consequence for killing the bird, and you dodge it no matter what. So what is the point of this? Imagine if the icicle actually could have killed one or both of them. That would be wild, having characters die this early and from something that isn't the main threat. But that would significantly change the story, and they'd have to come up with an entirely different sequence of events for the rest of the game. And that would take too much effort and cost too much money that could be used on the graphics. And we can't have a good game to go with our shiny graphics. Gotta show off the power of the PS4, am I right? Anyways, that ends the chapter. So it's time for more counseling, and I think Dr. Hill forgot to pay his electricity bill. So this time you have to pick the thing that scares you more out of 2 pictures. And what you choose can actually change something that happens later, but only aesthetically. Like if you choose spiders, a spider will crawl on this camera. Ooh. Or if you choose needles, the maniac will be holding a needle instead of a gas tank. And then there's this other choice. You could choose between clowns, scarecrows, or zombies. And that will change a mask that will appear a few times. The whole choosing your fears doesn't have a significant change. It's just, ooh, look, that thing you picked showed up. But it means nothing. They could have done something cool with it, like in Paper Mario, where you can tell Bowser what Mario is afraid of, and Cammy will actually place what you say in the level. This also happens in Super Paper Mario, and is even better because you can fight one of the previous bosses again like this. It's mostly made as a joke there, but here could actually have cool and significant changes if they were willing to put the effort into it. Like the choice between clowns, scarecrows, and zombies. What if that actually affected what happens? Like if you chose clowns, there would be a killer clown. But if you picked zombies, there would be zombies instead. Think of the potential they could have done with this. Oh, and partway through there's another fake jump scare.
Oh. Did I startle you? So sorry.
So now on to chapter 2. Wait, what? Before you can move on to the next chapter, we get a recap. This happens after every chapter, and you can't skip it. This is really annoying, especially if you play through it all at once. I get it. It's helpful if you stop playing and want to come back to it, but you should be able to skip it. The first time I played it, I played through the entire game in one sitting with my sister. We did a run where the black guy was the only survivor, and it was just annoying because we didn't need to be reminded about what we just went through. Oh, and it couldn't resist repeating the butterfly effect line from Chris.
Boom. Butterfly effect.
There's an indie Metroidvania game called Ghost 1.0. It's pretty good, it has a lot of story to it, and every time you start the game, it has a recap to remind you of what previously happened. But not only does it only happen after returning to the game, but you can skip it. Why is it this indie game did it right, where this big budget AAA game backed by Sony didn't? But that's enough. Now on to Chapter 2. Chapter 2 starts right outside the lodge, where almost everyone has arrived, and we meet Josh. Just so you know, Chris and Josh are best friends. They try to open the door, but the lock is frozen, so Chris suggests they go through the window. On the way behind the lodge, Josh starts talking to Chris, basically telling him he should just bone Ashley already. You get some dialogue choices, but they don't matter. So around the back, there's a missing axe. Well, it's a good thing it doesn't ever really amount to anything. So Chris climbs in the lodge, Josh gives him a lighter and tells him to get some deodorant. Damn, dude, I don't smell that bad, do I? Actually, he tells you to get spray-on deodorant to use with a lighter to melt the frozen lock. I'm sure nothing could possibly go wrong. And I'm right. There's no danger in this at all. So you wander around the place looking for the bathroom, while here you can pick up various clues. You have 3 pages in your menu dedicated to clues regarding the incident with Josh's sisters, the mystery man, and events that happened in the 40s. Now that's nice and all, but they don't serve much of a purpose. Okay, they're used to piece together parts of the plot, that part is fine, but since they are called clues and put in your menu, it's implied they serve a greater purpose. But they don't. It's just to help you understand the story better. But it's not like the story is hard to understand anyways. The plot is pretty straightforward. You'd easily be able to piece together pretty much everything by paying even the slightest bit of attention. There's no big mystery that won't be solved by the end, even if you ignore all the clues. It would be better if these were just stuff you found around without the game highlighting them for you like, hey, this is important, dummy. Let me figure it out on my own, game. You're not that smart as to require all these clues to realize what's going on. So anyways, you get the deodorant, and what else would happen but a fake jump scare?
Get the fuck?
How'd that thing even get in here? It somehow got in the lodge, then made its way into the bathroom while the door was shut, then locked itself in the cabinet. How? Anyway, so everyone is now in the lodge. Mike arrives and Matt gets a Vietnam flashback if he saw Mike and Em together earlier. The game will do that at points because it doesn't know the meaning of the word subtlety, and it can't trust you to remember your own choices, so it needs to remind you. Anyways, Matt will confront him and you can make him reasonable or make a fight break out. Doesn't really change anything though. Em then gets here and starts drama with Jess, and eventually Josh tells Matt and Jess to go bang in a cabin over there or something. Okay, remember this. Josh tells Mike and Jess to go to this cabin. Remember it. Em and Matt go off to find some bags or whatever. The plot didn't know what to do with these characters for a while, so they're just gonna go away for now. That leaves Josh, Chris, Ashley, and Sam still in the lodge. And the first thing Sam does is want to take a bath. What? Look, if I'm going over somewhere with my friends like this, I'm taking a bath before leaving. It's not like after a day of hanging out and you decide to take one then. She literally just got here. So we now take control of Mike while the two of them head off to the fancy guest cabin. And this is the most boring and tedious part of the game. It takes way too long to get to the damn thing. It takes 2 whole chapters before getting there, so I'm going to fast forward to the important parts. Along the way, you have to power up a generator, and for some reason Mike seems to think turning it on is a big deal.
Boom. Nice one, Mikey.
Also, another fake jump scare. Next, Jess falls into a mine. As Mikey could jump down immediately or be a coward until you're forced down anyways. And when that happens, another fake jump scare. Nothing important happens in the mine. They eventually find some binoculars and Jess apparently sees something. So Mike takes a look, and this part just baffles me. So Mike gets another fake jump scare and doesn't react to it. He will only say something if you look again.
Sampling the old eggnog again, babe? It's just us up here.
And all he says is he didn't see anything. What? Why is this here? Why put this fake jump scare here? Okay, that's it. I have to talk about it. This game, especially the early parts, love to put in fake jump scares. What I consider to be fake jump scares are jump scares that don't add anything. Just there to make you jump and have no significance to the story. Like in movies, when nothing happens but then a cat jumps out. That's a fake jump scare because there's no real threat. It's just there to annoy you. I especially hate jump scares that just play a loud sound when it actually would be more effective if there was no sound.
Just stay put.
Like, would this scene in Alien be more effective with a loud horror string? Contrary to popular belief, not all jump scares are bad. They can be done well. This game doesn't do them well. An example of good jump scares, and I know this will piss some of you off, is in Five Nights at Freddy's. Now, hear me out. I'm only talking about the first one, and what makes them good is because that's not the source of the fear. The game already sets the atmosphere well. The fear comes from the anticipation of the jump scare. The jump scares only happen when you lose. The jump scare is a penalty for your failure to keep them out. It can be effective this way, but the way Until Dawn does it is just annoying. And there's quite a few of them. Wait, do you hear that? Uh-oh, do I sense a jump scare montage? Anyways, back to where we were. They continue on the path and we get another lovely fake jump scare via bird.
Shut up, you goddamn birds!
Eventually, we get to a blockage on the path that Jess climbs over and disappears while screaming.
Jess!
And as this game likes to do often, right when something interesting finally happens, we switch characters, because why would you want the payoff to happen right away? So now we start Sam's quest for a bath. The water is cold, so she wants Josh to turn on the boiler. You'd think we would have that ready ahead of time, that and the lights. So Josh and Sam go to the basement to do that while Chris and Ash go to find a spirit board. During this, you get some dialogue choices that don't matter. Also, you can find a bat. I find this part funny. You need to shine the light where Josh is working by holding the controller still. But if you mess up, Sam just looks off somewhere else. Like, really? Is she just so easily distracted? What is compelling her to do that? Holding a flashlight up for someone isn't a difficult task in the slightest. Anyways, they get the boiler working, and after a couple more pointless dialogue choices, we get another fake jump scare. It's fake because it's just Chris. Chris did get the spirit board and they all go off to play with it while Sam takes a bath. Now, at this point, there's a scene with Matt and Em, but I didn't get the scene to appear in any of my playthroughs. I thought that maybe there was a specific choice I missed, but as it turns out, the reason I didn't get it was because it's a pre-order bonus. Really? You have a meaningless scene like this tied to a pre-order bonus? Whatever, I don't really care since it doesn't add anything. And now for more counseling. And I think Dr. Hill forgot to take down his Halloween decorations. He's also a dick since he'll have a couple things you said you feared on his desk. You get a few questions about how you feel about people who are afraid and what you value the most out of loyalty, honesty, and charity. It doesn't affect anything, so don't bother thinking too deeply about these choices. And that's it for Chapter 2. Well, this review turned out to be pretty big, so I'm splitting this up into parts. I'm planning on having 3 parts in total, so look forward to that. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, you should join my Discord server. Link to that in the description. Alright, I'll see you guys in part 2.